All right.
All
Ready
right.
to have some fun?
Yeah.
All right.
Ready to have some fun. Let's go.
Welcome to Mountains Made Low, where we help you encounter the love of God and live well in the modern world. I'm Christine Reagan.
And I am Dennis Mueller.
So this is an episode that I have waited a very long time for. We are having an episode on Star Wars theology.
And pop culture.
Yeah, a little pop culture. I mean, this is your baby. You love the Star Wars.
Yeah.
You dress like the Star Wars. You can quote the Star Wars. You can do all things Star Wars. And I frequently use Star Wars references in my teaching because there are times where I think about something or I'm explaining like a Catholic doctrine or principle and I say, it's kind of like this in Star Wars. And almost everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Right.
So Star Wars references are very much a crowd pleaser. But even more so, I find myself saying something about Catholicism or trying to give them an image of something and then saying, it's not like Star Wars or it's not like the Force. So I point out similarities and then I point out what I think are crucial differences.
Right.
And it always gets a bit of a smile. It gets a bit of a chuckle because I'm making a cultural reference.
Yeah. It
helps them understand the things that I'm talking about, which may seem even more foreign to them than a galaxy far, far away.
It was funny that you mentioned that, how the references do come up because in that conference that I was at last week, the 3 days for the educators here in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia for the Archbishop's Day for Educators. During the final homily on the third day, Bishop Espaya and Bishop Chilinsky were present. And Bishop Espaya was giving the homily. And he was talking about how every bishop has a see. And his see is in Tunisia. It was all related to St. Augustine,
sure.
Who's from Northern Africa. And he said that his see was in Tunisia and that Bishop Chilinsky's see was in Tunisia. And he said, any Star Wars fans, and actually everybody's kind of raising their hand. And he said, so for those of you who don't know, that's where Tatooine was filmed, and it was all filmed in Tunisia, and he's going in his Brooklyn accent, his Latino accent, and he says, what that means, he says, is that Bishop Chilinsky and I, we are the bishops of Star Wars. Got a good laugh, yeah. Right? But those references come up all the time, and I think just for clarification, for our listeners.
What did I say that was already wrong?
No. It's not wrong, but you kind of threw out there like you dress up as Star Wars.
Yeah.
like this is great, but we have a wide audience here, and not many people kind of know my habits outside of the podcast. One of the organizations that I belong to is the 501st Legion, which is a charitable organization, but It's also the premier costuming group for Star Wars clubs. It's the premier costuming club one of the premier costuming clubs for Disney and LFL. We have a relationship with them.
So does that mean that the costumes that you have are like licensed in a certain way?
No,
or
they're not officially licensed.
They're just more authentic than what I would make in my basement.
Right.
Okay.
So there's standards that belong to this particular club, and it's movie set quality is what it is. So which is why like Disney and LFL kind of turns to us for like some big events, movie premieres. They'll contact us. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade sometimes. Recently, in some of the TV series like Mandalorian and whatnot, what's really cool is they'll, rather than hiring extras and having to make costumes, they'll contact the 501st Legion and reach out to different garrisons in the country, in the locale, and ask them, can you send 50 members over? Everything's very hush-hush. They show up. You got 50 stormtroopers. The next thing you know, they're on the set of The Mandalorian.
So I assume that you just wait by the phone all the time.
Well, yeah. Just like, yeah.
Should that Mandalorian movie ever actually come out?
Right. But
so what costumes do you have when you do this? Who do you portray?
Well, the 501st Legion is the bad guys, the bad guys doing good.
I never thought you were one of the good guys.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Rebel Legion is another costuming club that's all the good guys. And then there's other groups out there too. But in terms of the 501st, you have to have a stormtrooper. My favorite is, as a kid growing up, was the biker scout. From Endor and everything. Just really cool. The speeder bikes. I just loved that as a kid, 7 or 8 years old, watching that, man. That was it. That was awesome. And then I have a Boba Fett as well.
Oh, okay. Now, is he a good guy or a bad guy?
Well, he's the most feared bounty hunter in the galaxy, so you make of it what you will, right?
But to really do this today was at my request, because I think it's just going to be a ball. I'm really excited about it. I'm happy to sit down with a child of the watch himself.
Until I ruin everything. So here's just a couple of trivia things for you, just to kind of see what you know.
Yeah.
Because
I cannot compete with your level of knowledge, even though I think I've embraced a lot of things like Star Trek, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings.
Right.
You're next level,
right?
In this way.
I have the things that I like, but I'm not full on. There's a lot of stuff that I don't know. I'm just more visual into it than some of the lore and everything. But like the Ewoks. Do you know that they're not called Ewoks at all in the Return of the Jedi? They're never mentioned by name.
I don't think they're even identified. They're just there.
Yeah, their name appears on the running credits at the end of the movie, and then their name really took off when all the toys came out. Because they were identified.
They were cute and cuddly.
Everybody knew that they were Ewoks. I mean, from those who
they're basically trebles, by the way. I just want to let you know that.
Those of us who are of the Imperial persuasion, we refer to them as murder bears. But and then Yoda. Do you know what his original name was in the script?
No, I don't.
You're gonna laugh. It was Buffy.
Buffy? Oh Lord! Thank goodness we made these changes. Oh my gosh! Is there an origin to Buffy?
No, George Lucas was just known for not having very creative names. When he kind of came up, and there was a young writer who had come in, and she read the script and she kind of rewrote it a little bit.
Thank you, Lord.
And he did have a first name. I think it was Minch or something like that. It was Minch Yoda, and then eventually the first name dropped and it just became Yoda. What we have today.
Oh.
And then,
gosh, what could have been?
Yeah. And then when you think about Darth Vader's Imperial flagship, the Executor, do you know how long that was?
Is that the Star Destroyer that they're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
No.
Do you want to guess how long it was? How big it was?
Gosh, a football field.
No. 11 miles. It was almost 12 miles long. That's how big it was.
In the Star Wars
universe.
Got it.
It was
holy mackerel.
Yeah, it was just under 12 miles long.
Well, I would also be terrified of that.
Right.
Then I didn't know it had a name. I just thought it was a Star Destroyer.
Yeah, your average. I think the average Star Destroyer that you see a lot in the films and everything, they're about a mile.
Okay.
So this is how huge this one was.
My
It's kind of cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah, it's neat stuff. So today, I think what we're going to do is dive into this galaxy, see the connection between some of the Star Wars lore and some of the Star Wars themes, and how it resonates with our Christian faith.
Yeah, because I think what Star Wars did really well, and something I love about it, is that it opened up people to a world that recognized like the visible and the invisible realities.
Yeah.
And I find that very theological. And I also find you can take it in a very Catholic direction. I don't think it was overtly meant to be Catholic or Christian at all.
No,
because I think George Lucas, I think he had a Christian upbringing, but he took on like Buddhist
a lot
practice and understanding.
Even the Jedi were kind of modeled after
monks.
Like more along the lines of Asian, Japanese.
But I was thinking like Buddhist monks, something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's what you meant. Yeah. When I went red Christian when you said monks.
Well, as you should.
Right.
But I always felt like they treated the religious aspect of what was going on in Star Wars, maybe something like the Jedi, with a lot of reverence. Yeah. And I thought, I appreciate that. So anything that paints religion in a positive light, I'm like, hey, let's use that and then allow it to introduce themes that are even more important.
Yeah, there's themes that you can pull from Star Wars that work right into certain Christian retreat themes and all those things. There's definitely a connection there.
But
sometimes you have to stretch it.
Differences.
Yeah, but there's definite differences too. So you have to really be careful how you use it, because it's not really meant to be a direct connection at all. No,
you don't want it to leave somebody who doesn't understand something fully to just misunderstand entirely. Where we're going to start today is understanding of the Force versus our Trinitarian understanding of God. So what is the Force, Dennis?
Do you know where George Lucas got the inspiration from that?
I think you need to assume that I don't know any of the answers that you're going to ask.
I think it was a 1963-1964 film. It was just called 2187. It was a very short film.
Oh, okay.
That's where they talk about this Force and reference it in this short film. And that was very influential for George Lucas. And he kind of latched on to the idea of that and kind of developed it into something that we see in Star Wars.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because there's a lot of what they always call like Easter eggs, these little hidden things that are always in Star Wars. A lot of people, a lot of producers and a lot of directors put these things in there. And George was no stranger to that himself. I mean, this influenced this film 2187. Well, that was the cell number for Princess Leia's. She was in prison. It was cell 2187.
Little homage.
And Finn in the new trilogy, 2187, right? That was
okay.
That was his number. So sometimes you see these things kind of recurring over and over again. In every movie, it's always like, I've got a bad feeling about this.
Yes.
Right? There's always something that's an homage to something that's there in Star Wars. But when you talk about this idea of the Force, it's this mysterious spiritual force, but it's very impersonal. It's connected to the entire universe, but it's not the loving God who made everything from nothing, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and who knows each one of us intimately. You can't have a personal relationship with the Force.
It just exists.
Right.
I think about what Obi-Wan said in episode 4. He says this to Luke. He said, "The Force is what gives a Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us, and it binds the galaxy together." So it seems to be a part of the created order. It's this reality beyond the tangible material world, but it's caught up in the world. But that's not God.
And I think the balance thing always kind of throws people off.
It does.
When a lot of times when we're thinking about the Force needs to be balanced, we're thinking about this. It has to be equal. It's got to be like this 50-50 split. That good is dependent or coexistent with evil, and back and forth. But that's not really how Lucas envisioned it. If Lucas was trying to make good and evil codependent on each other, he would have failed miserably, because when you listen to the lore behind the Force, it's really driven towards the idea. When they talk about balance, what they're talking about is that it's the good.
I've always misunderstood that.
Yeah.
So it's really not that it's just goodness and evil have to be on equal footing.
Right. So when they're talking about things are out of balance, it's when evil begins to rise and take over. It's out of balance because good needs to suppress and eradicate the evil. It shouldn't exist. And so when it does exist, then there's imbalance in the Force.
Oh, so you're saying that the dark side of the Force should not exist?
Well, you talk to the Jedi, that's their whole MO. It's something that needs to be eradicated. It's something that needs to be resisted. And you see that all throughout the films.
But it's just so different from the God of Abraham, God that we believe in, the only God that exists, because there's no disturbance in God, and he's never out of balance. And I think sometimes we think about that. We think about, this life is just about kind of choosing your path. Are you going to go the way of goodness, or are you going to go the way of evil? And we don't think about what evil really is, which is a deprivation of goodness that should exist. Mm-hmm. That's very Christian then. Not this idea of balancing out evil acts with good acts.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we see that a little bit too in society today, with people who have a misunderstanding about God and think that God has an opposite, being Satan, and then there's this battle between good and evil to kind of see who's going to win. A lot of people think that. When it comes to that relationship, Satan is a creature of the Creator, and he's subservient to him, right? Mm-hmm. So there is no equal there. God has no equal. But I think that you see this relationship kind of play out sometimes, and it can be confusing to some people.
And as Catholic Christians, we're not caught up in this continuous battle between good and evil, light and dark. And we just get to see who will win. Because it's almost like in Star Wars, it's like a cliffhanger. Yeah. How is the tide going to turn, and what's going to happen in light of that? That's not this life that we're in. Evil is not dependent on the existence of good, and vice versa. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of dualism that you see too in the Force.
Well, just the light and the dark is very dualistic.
Yeah, I really think. I mean, if the Apostle John were alive today, I think this would be right up his alley. I mean, I think the whole dualism thing, because he has so much dualism in his gospel. But he's really. It's interesting because when. And I'm going out on a stretch here, so please, again, don't take anything as
I'm here for
saying it's theologically correct. But when you take a look at John's gospel, there is dualism. But in terms of light versus dark, the light is meant to triumph over the darkness.
Yes.
And so in that sense, in the most stretched connection that I could make, that's you can kind of see where it's the same Jedi philosophy with regards to the light side and the dark side. Light is meant to rule over the darkness.
And they want people to cooperate with that.
Right, and the darkness needs to be suppressed, it needs to be conquered, it needs to be eradicated. And you see that dichotomy in John's gospel, the way he writes.
Because sin causes the darkness.
Right, yeah.
And we believe that as Christians, the light does ultimately win out over the darkness, if you want to use kind of Star Warsy language.
Sure.
Because we believe that Jesus, through his passion, his death, his resurrection, and his ascension, has already claimed victory over evil. And that's true, even if we're still living in a time that it hasn't been fully realized yet. But victory has been won. Victory has already been claimed. It's just about when we're going to see the ultimate fulfillment of that. So we're caught up in a battle, but we're not in some way. The battle has also been won, right? It's like a very Christian paradoxical situation.
Yeah, I always looked at it as like a war of attrition now. It's just, they've lost. Yeah. They've kind of lost, but they're just, we're still fighting because maybe we don't know what else to do.
And there's one who would like us to still live a different way, so that the damage that can be done in the meantime, I mean, he's still looking for casualties.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about Star Wars, though, is that I always felt, at least in the original series, I think it's also true in the prequels, that there were very clear lines of morality. I never felt like, until more recent editions of Star Wars, which I can't speak to necessarily as much, I always felt like the lines between good and evil were very clear. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. I think when you get it, well, the original trilogy was very, very clear, for sure.
Do you have a favorite?
It's the original.
Same.
It's the original. And then I would say right after that would be Rogue One. I mean, to me, in terms of the stuff that's being produced in the modern era, Rogue One was probably right up there. I'd put it right up there with the original trilogies.
Okay.
In terms of the writing and what was done in that. That was a really, really good movie.
And where would you put The Phantom Menace? I'm just curious. Where would you put Jar Jar Binks and whatever the heck that was? Yeah, that is. There's some parts of The Phantom Menace that I do like.
Yeah.
There's not a lot there.
Right.
There's not a lot there.
There's definitely some things to kind of appreciate in that. It wasn't the best. I'm not. That's not really my fan. But what I am a fan of are the Clone Wars, the animated series.
Yeah.
The animated series did an incredible job of fleshing out that series. And really, I mean, I really didn't like Anakin in the prequel, but I really liked him in the Clone Wars.
Okay.
Because they really developed him.
And he's good in that stage. Is he
yeah,
fighting?
He is,
is he fighting with his
he's a Jedi.
attraction to the dark side?
He's a Jedi, but you can kind of see him where he kind of walks the line very close to the edge a lot of times.
Oh gosh, don't we all?
Yeah, and then eventually we know how it ends because of the prequels.
Yes,
right? We know how that all ends. But yeah, it's good. I when you talk about this idea of good versus evil, I think it's a little bit more complex than just a good versus evil type thing.
Okay.
Because when you talk about this idea of the Force, I mean, the Force can be used by sentient beings. It's fueled by their emotions, and the outcome is really dependent upon the wielder's disposition. So this is why, like, a Jedi like Anakin and Dooku and the Grand Inquisitor can fall and become Sith, right?
Okay, and who is the Grand Inquisitor? Is that Snoke?
No, No.
I was just asking.
No, the Grand Inquisitor's the Grand Inquisitor. The Inquisitors were all the ones who were responsible for hunting down the Jedi after Order 66.
Okay.
Yeah, so
you say it as though I should have known
you should
that.
have known,
I said at the beginning, I don't know what you know.
But they really kind of surface in the animated series.
Oh,
yeah,
all right.
More than anything else, yeah.
But I'm learning so much.
They can fall. You can fall as a Jedi, and you can fall into the trappings of the dark side. You can become Sith, and the same thing. There are Sith who have been redeemed. You think about Kylo Ren in the latest trilogy. You think about Vader in the original trilogy. You go back into some of the expanded universe before Disney killed everything when they took over. You had Mara Jade, who was kind of fallen and then was redeemed, and there's a lot of other characters. So there is stories of falling and redemption, and you can kind of make those connections, I think, too, just with our own lives, and sin, and how sometimes we just fall. We fall into evil. We fall into the trappings of sin. You think about some people that really struggle with certain sins in their life and how pervasive they can be and how consuming they can kind of be, and how sometimes it can even lead us to begin to believe that, well, I'm made this way, right? This is who I am. When we talk about John Paul II's quote,
You are not the sum of your failures.
yes, and
you
mistakes.
Are the sum of
You are the sum of the Father's love
for you.
right?
Yeah.
The Father's love for you. And so we're always, no one's ever beyond redemption. We're always capable of being redeemed. And it's great when you see some of these dark side characters in Star Wars through an act of self-sacrifice, which really leads to their redemption. There's definitely, I like that because I can kind of connect that Christologically, that self-sacrifice, that self-sacrificial love.
Yeah, once you know Jesus, it's hard to not see him in so many different areas and stories. And it's all imperfect. It doesn't do him justice. But when you see something like, we'll talk about self-sacrifice in a little bit, but you just see, I see Jesus in that.
Yeah.
That's what he would have done, or that's how he would have behaved. And I think sometimes these characters are being written in a Christ-like way, and the writers don't even know it. They don't realize the effect that Christianity has had on them and the culture and their stories. It just shows you how applicable the person of Jesus is to every person, the entire universe, even this made-up universe of Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
Sticking with the Force for a second, I think you're often encouraged to trust the Force. How many times in the movies do you hear that? Use the Force. Trust your instincts. Trust the Force.
Right.
It will provide strength to you. They're implying that it will guide you if you tap into the energy that it is. Now, again, God's not an energy, but I think about the scripture in Ephesians. This is chapter 6. It says, "For our struggle is not with flesh and blood, but with principalities, with powers, with the world rulers of this present darkness, with evil spirits in the heavens." And so this idea that we are battling the invisible realities of the world. It's not you. It's not our fellow neighbor or another human being. We're battling sin, death, the demonic. And so that always kind of made me think about, we're encouraged to trust the Force in Star Wars, or the characters are, and we have to trust God because we have to know what the battle is that we're really fighting.
Evil spirits in the heavens being stormtroopers.
If that's what helps you make sense of the world. Yeah. But Christians are called to trust in God's providence and have faith in, not in an energy field, but in the person of Jesus. I can't have a relationship with an energy field.
Right.
And I still think there are people listening today, myself included sometimes, that forgets about the persons that exist in God. And we think that the divine is just an energy force. It becomes very new age, and that's dangerous.
Yeah.
If we don't recognize that what's going on in Star Wars is in fact fantasy and not the reality that we live in, it can be a very theologically dangerous place for us. But I can have if God is a person, I can have a relationship with a God who is a family of love. I love in John 14 when Jesus says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, also believe in me." The most necessary distinction between the Force and God himself.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because I think today many people turn to the universe and energies and all of this other stuff, this new age stuff, yoga, chakras, etc. But you can't have a personal relationship with the universe. It's distant, it's cold, it's non-relational, and love is painfully absent in those expressions, in those experiences. Quite frankly, it's depressing.
The universe can't hug you. Like when you're struggling, the universe can't go out to you. It can't put its hand on your shoulder. God can do all of those things and more in one way or another.
Through each other. Even.
Through each other, exactly. Yeah. The universe could never do that.
That's where the danger kind of comes in at, because, we're created for love. And Scripture tells us that we have a God who is love, who is personal, who wants to be in communion with us. But you don't get any of that in like this whole Star Wars mythology. It's just not part of it. I think that kind of goes back into maybe a little bit, and again, I'm out of my depth here, but goes back into that Asian persuasion.
You should have said, I'm out of my quadrant here. I need more Star Wars references. I'm out of my... What's that, like, that ridge that they talk about all the time? Planets beyond this particular ridge.
The Outer Rim.
The Outer Rim,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really out in the Outer Rim here,
right,
but go ahead.
I'm beyond the Outer Rim here in terms of this, but I don't... The way it's portrayed, again, is a little bit more closer related to some of the mysticism and religious expression in Asian culture.
Yes. which I don't think is bad for people to know about. You know, I would never practice it actively. The more I understand what somebody else believes, I know what I don't believe, and I know what I do believe.
Yeah.
And I can get that even from watching a Star Wars. I can make theological, maybe it's just the nature of what we do here, but I can reflect on the person of Jesus as I watch Star Wars. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you can only do that the more you know who Jesus is. And you know what the Force is not doing for you.
Right.
If it even were real, you know?
Right.
All right, so that's the Force. Let's move on to the Jedi. Very religious, very mystical, very mysterious, the Jedi are. So let's talk about the Jedi training and stuff and all things surrounding Jedi and how it relates or doesn't relate to Catholic spirituality. So something I've always admired about the Star Wars series is how they portray the Jedi. It's like a religious order in some way, and they have certain disciplines and they strive for certain things.
They have temples and
they have texts. They wear a habit.
Sacred texts, yeah.
Mm-hmm. They have a weird rat tail. Can't figure that out. It seems like you don't always have a rat tail. It denotes if you're like a Padawan learner, right? Yeah. There's discipleship. Right. There's the theme of discipleship in the Jedi. Mm-hmm. You're meant to learn from your elders. There's a lot of respect for your elders. They're encouraged to be detached from worldly things so that they can better train and become masters. We call some saints spiritual masters. Mm-hmm. The Jedi have a hierarchy and they have councils. Mm-hmm. And so all of these things have some place in Catholic Christian spirituality.
But you have to remember too that when you take a look at the story arc, it's the Jedi who ultimately lose their way by serving the Galactic Senate rather than the Force.
When does this happen?
Well, the unraveling begins during the Clone Wars, in the prequels. I mean, this is what kind of sets it up, when Palpatine's on the scene and he's manipulating things and so the Jedi are kind of drawn into this, and instead of seeking and being one with the Force and serving the Force, they begin to serve the needs of the Galactic Senate. They become military. You
kind of enslave yourself when you do that.
Right, they become military generals, and this is not what they were meant to be. And it kind of, they do, there's some Jedi that kind of speak out and kind of raise their voice and their concern over this, but they're oftentimes just ignored or dismissed.
That's interesting. I never really, I don't know enough about that part of it, so you don't really think about the Jedi. I know the Jedi lose their way at some point. I kind of assumed it was because they were all killed, but maybe they were all, Order 66 was able to be enacted because they lost their religion.
They lost their way, they lost their way. Sometimes they could be very rigid with regards to what needed to be done. Think about Mace Windu.
Wait, didn't he fall out a window when he died? Wait, is that?
I don't know. I don't think that.
I'm pretty sure.
I've never heard that. I've never heard that connection, but that would be funny if it was. But
how does Mace Windu die?
Oh, he is.
I think he falls out a window.
He is. He's force pushed by the Emperor.
Right, out a window.
Right.
That's the most brilliant Freudian slip I've heard in a long time. Oh God!
Please try again later.
She had one job to do, and that was to tell me.
But no, when Mace Windu, when he refuses to bring Anakin to train, they're so rigid in their thinking they can't see what Qui-Gon Jinn sees in the potential and wanting to train him. So there's resistance to that, and that rigidity contributes to their undoing. But we see this in matters of faith too.
We do.
We see this in matters of faith too.
The Jedi are also trained not to act on their emotions. You talked about the rigidity. So kind of in that same vein of rigidity, it sounded like I said virginity. Well, they probably were, right? They couldn't marry, right?
They weren't supposed to marry.
They weren't supposed to. But speaking about that rigidity, they were trained to not trust their emotions, right? Because your emotions can be misleading.
They can be deceiving.
They can be deceiving. That's very true. That's just, I know that from living. You do too.
Right.
And they were kind of trained to not act on their emotions.
Right.
And that's really where it seemed like the Sith tried to deceive people more times than not. Give in to the strong emotion. Give in to the passion. So they were taught to be aware of their feelings, control their feelings, because if it was left unchecked, it could lead to their demise. It could lead to the dark side. And the Sith were those who aligned themselves with a more passionate way of life, right?
Right. Yeah, they embrace their emotions. They give into their emotions all the time, which were more primitive. It was just again anger, hate, and more of those primitive emotions. But we see this
to your anger.
Right. We see this all the time when it comes to sin. I mean, what is sin? I mean, sin is when we reject our intellect and we act our will, our desire. Both our will and our intellect are diminished. But when we just begin to act based upon our emotions, that emotional response, we're acting more without our intellect. 9 times out of 10, when you throw your mind out the window, you find yourself in a lot of trouble because you're not thinking things clearly. You're not thinking about the consequences. You're not thinking about the harm that you're doing. You're just acting impulsively sometimes.
And Anakin's very impulsive.
Yeah, but we see this too, I think, in society. I mean, geez, we talk about social media a lot.
God, you see it in my life, Dan.
It happens all the time. So much like the dark side of the Force, we give into our emotions and we can embrace sin. And I think that's one of the things that made Star Wars so appealing, is because they could kind of relate to that.
The human experience.
Yeah, I think most of us in the human experience could relate to what's going on in the lives of these individuals.
Well, when Yoda says his whole fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. I mean, what a truth.
Can you do it in Yoda's voice?
I cannot. It's going to sound like a infirmed Fozzie Bear. It's not going to sound good. It's going to sound terrible. All right. Let's talk about, how about forgiveness and redemption?
Yeah, because I think that these are probably one of the biggest themes that you have in Star Wars. I mean, because Luke is kind of coming from this mythological background. And I forget the name of the guy whose writings he referenced. It was a big influence on him. It was I think
Like a philosopher?
No, he was somebody who just did this whole. He explored the mythologies of all cultures throughout the world and was able to see a lot of common themes in the mythology that existed. And so there's this archetype of a story present in every single culture. And that had great influence on George Lucas when he read that. And that's really what provided the framework for Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it resonates with so many people, because it speaks to us.
Well, it's an archetypal story.
Yeah, because it speaks to us on that archetypal level.
And we know it's true so often, right? That's why an archetype is an archetype.
Right, so we can relate to a lot of the themes that are going on here, even though we might not be able to identify with maybe the characters or maybe some of the presentation of the material, the way it kind of unfolds.
Yeah. I just love that the characters, there's really nobody who's past the point of no return.
Right.
I mean, you have to look at the whole Vader arc.
Yeah.
He's a brilliant kid. He's good. He's annoying. He becomes kind of an angsty teenager, and he's trying to figure himself out and figure out his emotions and how not to be ruled by them. And ultimately, that's his gateway to evil. And he does terrible things, but he's not a lost cause. And his own son knows he's not a lost cause.
Yeah.
Is there anybody in Star Wars who is a lost cause? Like, is the Emperor a lost cause? Because he's like the embodiment of all evil. Is he not?
Yeah. I mean, he is.
Thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Is he a devil character? Is he supposed to be the devil in the story?
No, I mean, he's just one of a long line of Sith. I mean, by the time Kylo Ren comes around, I mean, I think he's like 119 in terms, when he's kind of cloned in that and reborn through that whole Kylo arc. So he has predecessors, but he's somebody who's kind of completely and totally given himself over to evil and has no interest in redemption. And there are people in our world that are like that. We just reject God. We reject communion with God. We reject what God is inviting us to. We don't want to have anything to do with it. We've turned our back on Him. But I don't think that the Emperor really was
ever going to be redeemed.
Well, yeah, I don't think he was interested in redemption. He had no desire for redemption. Whereas when you take a look at the Vader arc, when you take a look at the Kylo arc, there's like a crack. There's there's you can see that it's possible. It's going to be really, really hard, and that gives us hope, right? And that's where the hope, that this whole theme of hope kind of comes in. Hope with Han Solo that his son would turn away, and that and hope with Luke that his dad would turn back, right? Yeah. This ever driving hope that they could be redeemed because they see something in them that they don't see in themselves.
Vader's kind of like a prodigal son figure, but he's the prodigal father in some ways.
in a sense, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, who doesn't love a story of returning to the love of the Father? I think that's why it is so emotional when he and Luke return to right relationship just for a brief moment in time, but then that lasts the rest of Luke's life too.
And even the title of that film where that happens in the Return of the Jedi, a lot of people, like, when they hear that title, they think it's Luke, right? Because he's now a Jedi, right? He comes back from Dagobah and training, and now he is the first Jedi, and the Jedi have made their return since Order 66.
That is what I thought.
Yeah, and the reality is that, the Jedi never really left. They're still floating around. You have Cal Kestis, from the video series, and there's other Jedi that kind of appear that are always on the run, so that they're out there, but they're not any type of formal powerhouse like they were with a temple and an organization. They're just kind of like rogue solos just trying to make a difference. But so you have this idea of Return of the Jedi. It's really Vader or Anakin, right? Anakin
comes back.
It was kind of neat. I didn't like it at first because when they re-released the original trilogies with the updated version, they had removed the original, like in the scene in the Ewok village, and they're up in the trees.
Like Force ghosts.
Where they're Force ghosts. They removed the original Darth Vader, who was the older Anakin. They removed him, and then they put in... And it makes for a strong connection.
You like that or you don't like
it? I wasn't a fan of it when I first saw it, but yeah, I mean, I can see it now. I have a better appreciation for it now because I understand when they're talking about the Return of the Jedi, it's not just Luke, but it's also Anakin, aka Vader, when he's redeemed.
Yeah,
he returns. He leaves the dark side and he comes back to his roots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that you see him as he kind of should have been. It's not a resurrection from the dead thing. I don't want to say that, but you see him in a way that people kind of would have best remembered him.
Yeah.
To me, it signals God putting the pieces back together of your original image,
right,
as opposed to what you were turned into, the machine that darkness turned you into. So there's redemption for Vader, but there's redemption for others along the way too. So many of the characters in Star Wars have a checkered past. There's Han Solo, there's Lando, there's Boba Fett, there's Cassian Andor, which you could certainly speak to more. There's Kylo. I don't know what to make of his story. I still find it very confusing. I also wish he would put a shirt on the whole time. I'm like, why is he shirtless in this movie? There's no need for it. It is what it is. But I think it reminds us that as Christians, it's never too late to do the right thing. We all make mistakes, but we're not our mistakes. And we can try again. We can begin again.
Yeah.
And we can
Your
strive for higher things.
Sin doesn't define who you are.
And it's life-changing. It's life-changing for all of the characters who, whether it didn't really matter what side you started out on, you could always turn over a new leaf. And it was often through the support of the people on the right side that said, you could, like Luke, just saying, I know I can feel the good in him. I can sense the good in him. I mean, there's so many people, some of the students that I teach, I don't think they're on the dark side. It's nothing like that. But I can see what their potential is if they would just open themselves up to what I know God would have in store for them. I can see it for them, even if they can't see it themselves.
I was just doing a presentation just last night for a group of catechists at a local parish, and one of the things that I was trying to emphasize to them is that, in their role as a catechist, their job really is to draw out, because that's what the Latin word for education means. Educare means to draw out. And we often think about education as something that we give and something that we provide. But education is what we're doing is we're drawing out the God-given potential, the God-given gifts, the God-given charisms that child possesses, and helping them to utilize those gifts, to recognize those gifts so they can grow in holiness and become the saint that God has created them to be. That's an incredible responsibility. But can we see that child for who they are? When little Tommy comes in and you're sitting there banging your head against the wall because you're like, oh my gosh, he's here tonight. When is this kid going to be absent? I can't take him, right? Can you see that potential? Can you see, when you look at him, do you see a masterpiece of God's creation? When you look at him, do you see the face of Christ Jesus? A lot of times we would say, nope, I see the devil, right? But the reality is that there's the presence is there. Do we see that? Do we recognize that? So it's an important theme.
You mentioned about self-sacrifice and how there's so many stories of self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
And I think this is the most Catholic theme in all of Star Wars. It's certainly the one that I respond to the most.
Hope too. I think hope.
Hope too.
It's all woven together. So hope and self-sacrifice for sure, yeah.
There's so many people who give up the gift of their own life, and it's so Christ-like in its representation. And the gospel tells us there's no greater gift that you can give than to give your life for your friend. It's exactly what Jesus does for us. And so there's many parallels to martyrdom in the series too.
Yeah.
Kind of being, you die for the good cause. You die so that other people can live. You die for things that you will not see come to fruition necessarily, so that others can live in peace and harmony. So that they're very, very strong themes. And I think they're really heroic themes. Being heroic is not about seeking power or domination. It's about giving yourself up for others. And it's the most inspirational to me about the story. It's seen in Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan is wildly sacrificial, right? And it's, what does he say? He says to Vader, that they're having that little saber battle. He says, if you strike me down now, I will become more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
That's not Vader who says that. That's Obi-Wan who says it,
right.
which I think is interesting because it sounds like something that the Emperor would say. But what the Emperor says is what? What does the Emperor say? I don't know if he says it to Luke or to Anakin, but he talks about if you give into your anger, road to the dark side will be complete.
Complete, yeah.
So they both kind of talk about if
Complete your training.
what will happen if you strike down.
Strike me down, right? She
And
says,
it's-
strike me down.
They're entirely opposite circumstances.
Yeah.
So Obi-Wan allows himself to be taken over by Vader so that Luke and everybody can escape. Also so he can continue to guide Luke in a way that he considers to be more powerful.
Right.
Is that not what Jesus does, right? Jesus says to his followers after his resurrection, it's better if I go. Doesn't he say that?
Yeah,
It's better if I
yeah,
go.
yeah.
And so there's, again, please don't come away from this episode thinking that we're saying Obi-Wan is Jesus. We're not. I'm saying that the themes of Jesus, I think, are found in these stories. I think Jesus is the model, whether they realize it or not.
It's almost subconscious.
It's written in our heart.
It's written in our
Yeah.
heart. So you can't help but write what you know. And I do. I think that even though it's not, like Lord of the Rings is certainly overtly Christocentric. Like Star Wars, not so much, but it's there.
It's there.
It's there. You know, there's definitely some
Implicitly
themes.
or explicitly.
Yeah,
it's there.
it's more implicit. It's not really direct, and that certainly wasn't the intention of it. You know, they weren't writing with that in mind.
But how often do we cooperate with God's grace and we don't know we're doing it?
That's just it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We do it all the time, and we don't know that we're doing it more often than anything. It's those rare instances when we are becoming aware of it that we have like, oh, what a wonderful moment, and how privileged it was to realize that you were being used in that moment. But most of the time we don't. We have no idea when we say that encouraging word, when you take the time to pray with somebody, the impact that that's going to have on them later, and how that might be the catalyst for them maybe coming back to the church or reconnecting with God. We won't know that, but we were the instrument of that, right?
So Obi-Wan is sacrificial. Vader is sacrificial, right? He takes on the electricity of the Emperor so to save his son, but it kills him.
The Force lightning.
The Force lightning.
Yeah,
I knew there was a better term for it than Ben Franklin's
Right.
electricity, his kite experiment. Han Solo, especially in the new movies, right? He puts himself in danger to remind his son of who he is, what his real name is, who he is, and what he's capable of. And he loses his life in the process.
Right.
But I think he pricks Kylo's conscience enough that it ultimately leads to redemption on his end too.
Yeah.
But he gets killed, you know? And I think it's interesting that, because he's like a Vader character, right? Because Kylo wears the helmet. He idolizes Vader. Vader's son had an opportunity to kill him and he didn't. And what does the new Vader do? He kills his own father.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's well written.
Right.
It's well done.
Yeah. Just as a little aside too, I don't know about, you probably don't know this, but the whole reason why they put Han in kryptonite and all that other the kryptonite in
Don't mix your fantasy metaphors.
the whole reason why they carbon froze Han Solo at the end of The Empire Strikes Back was because they weren't sure if he was going to come back or not.
Oh, thank
Harrison
God he
Ford.
did.
Yeah,
Can
Harrison
you
Ford.
imagine?
Yeah. He was kind of on the fence a little bit.
Well, Alec Guinness was not a huge fan of the series either.
Right.
He I think he had such a career. He was also a stage actor. Yeah. So I think he looked, well, what am I known for? And what is he still known for? Star Wars.
Right.
You know,
right.
not the Shakespeare,
Right.
the Star Wars.
Wars.
So I can see how that would be like, come on, I'm a real actor, you know. I think the most sacrificial, and you can speak to this because you love it so much, is the Rogue One story, which I don't know how much I love it as a movie. I haven't seen it in a long time. I should probably revisit it. But all of those people give their life so that others can live. It is very moving at the end when they know they're going to die.
Right.
But they know that they've at least done what they could to save the people. You take it from here.
Oh, it's all worth
Yeah.
it for them, and
Yeah.
they kind of realize it. Especially, it's neat how the Andor series really fleshes out Andor's backstory, Cassian's backstory, because you can kind of see like how many times in those episodes does he just say like, I'm out, I'm done with this, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm leaving. And he stays. He's connected. He's still connected. He's still going back to Lucian, and he's still working with him and saving him and coming at a moment's notice. He never really severs the tie. And so you can almost see like there's this battle being waged kind of within him. And then finally it all kind of coalesces in Rogue One. You see that coalescence in Rogue One at the end of the film where he's ready now to make the ultimate sacrifice. Whereas before he wasn't. He was really looking like I need to save myself. He realizes now that this is all worth it.
Yeah, their sacrifice makes the
There's a
victory
greater good
possible.
Yeah, there's a greater good.
And it shows us that God, if to put it in a more Christian framework, God works all things together for good.
Yeah.
Even the things that we don't see win
Yeah.
or claim that victory in the end.
What is it that motivates them to make that sacrifice?
What is it?
It's hope.
Okay.
Right? It's hope. I mentioned it earlier. I mean, it's this firm belief that one can be saved and that all is not lost, that there's something bigger than themselves, to believe in and to trust in. And I remember doing a youth retreat several years ago. I mean, a lot of these kids would probably be all in college or halfway through college by now, but we did a whole retreat shortly after Rogue One was released, and just on this theme of hope and its connection to the virtue of hope in Christianity.
How did it go over? Did it go over?
It went good. Well, I mean, coming over, hanging overnight, and watching a movie, and all of that stuff. That was kind of the cool thing. I can't remember.
So you just wanted to watch the movie, and you created an entire.
I had to do something. All right, let's put this on the gym wall, and see what we can do. And we used it for a retreat experience, and it was good, to explore those themes. But Obi-Wan has this great quote that is certainly it's hope filled, and he says this in after Order 66 is executed. He says, "This is Master Obi-Wan. I regret to report that both our Jedi Order and the Republic have fallen, with the dark shadow of the Empire rising to take their place. This message is a warning and a reminder for any surviving Jedi. Trust in the Force. Do not return to the temple. That time has passed, and our future is uncertain. We will each be challenged, our trust, our faith, our friendship, but we must persevere, and in time, a new hope will emerge. May the Force be with you always." Right? I mean, it's a great quote from Obi-Wan when he records that message. But just the whole idea.
Your eyes just lit up.
Oh, well, but it's just this. But it's just
like, oh my gosh.
But it's just this idea of this hope will emerge. That there's a hope. All's not lost.
It's not a message of like doom and gloom.
Yeah, all's not lost. The temple's destroyed. The Republic has fallen. We're going to be our faith, our friendship, our trust is all going to be tested. But all's not lost. There's a new hope will emerge. We will get through this. And so this idea of hope, I think, that runs throughout a lot of the Star Wars movies is really an important one. And we did an episode on hope, where we talked about the importance of hope, because hope sustains us. You have to have faith in order for hope to exist. And when you have hope, then you're free to love. So those theological virtues are all kind of connected. There's
other elements that I think would certainly be worth attention. I think we're trying to limit it to be some of the things that most people are familiar with. There are elements of The Mandalorian that are kind of reminiscent of the religious aspect of the Jedi, right? That this is the way thing. And they have a lot of ritual to how they operate as well. I think we'll probably close it down here. I just think that where you can engage with the culture, you should. And if it's helpful to offer Christ to somebody by giving them an image that they would better recognize or that they could more easily respond to in the moment, something like a Star Wars theme or image or a story of self-sacrifice, then we should use it to get to the truth that they really need, right?
Yeah.
Something that would actually
Let's be
wildly
honest.
improve their quality of life.
Let's be honest. I mean, this is what Jesus does in the gospel, right? When he tells his parables, when he tells his stories, he's using everyday examples, everyday things that people are intimately familiar with, from sowing seeds to vineyards to shepherding. And what does he do? He uses them to help explain who God is.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with making those type of connections. You're able to make them clearly, right? I mean, you have to make sure that those connections are clearly made and clearly defined. But yeah.
What we can use, we should use.
Yeah.
And to not just brush things off in the culture as though, because it is a product of the culture and a product of the world that is largely sinful, that we can't make use of things.
Right.
So yeah, something is, and also, it's just nice to enjoy things too. Right, there are some things that we like just because we like them, and you just like Star Wars. I think sometimes, like, why do you like Star Wars? Because I like it.
Because you like it,
and
right.
it's fun.
Yeah.
So,
and you and I haven't disagreed about anything so far.
I don't. That's true. I want to be as respectful as possible of your other religion. So, do you have a favorite character?
Do I? Oh, it was always Boba Fett. Yeah, he was just so cool.
Really?
He was very enigmatic. You know, when he appeared in Star Wars, I was so mad as a kid when in Return of the Jedi. I do remember that when he fell in the Sarlacc pit, and that was the end of him. He was just too cool to go out that way. So when in season 2 of The Mandalorian, when they brought him back. Oh man,
was he never brought back in the stories of the
No. I'm pretty sure. Like, I wasn't really big into the expanded universe with all of the books and everything that kind of came out before, again, Disney's put the kibosh on it and killed everything. I'm pretty sure that he came back in the expanded universe, but it was really cool to kind of see him on screen like that. Right, I just remember his silhouette one time, and I knew right away it was Boba Fett before they even showed him. And really, really cool. Really, 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 really cool.
Yeah, The Mandalorian has done a nice job with most of its storylines.
Yeah, and I forget the number of lines that he had. He hardly said anything in the movie either.
Yeah.
He did not have hardly any speaking role. I think you only see him for like maybe a total of like 6.5, 7 minutes total between the films. You know, his screen time. But man, he was just so cool. And now I get to be Boba.
I was going to say, if there's one thing we know about Dennis, he wants to be cool. So hopefully you like this. It's a bit of a departure from what we normally do. But thank you for allowing us to kind of indulge something that I think we mutually enjoy, each to our own degree. I think Star Wars is great.
We'll have to do something on Lord of the Rings for your benefit.
I don't know that I know Lord of the Rings that much better. To be totally honest with you, I think I kind of, because I think I can hold a conversation with Star Wars, right? I don't think I'm wildly that much more knowledgeable about Lord of the Rings. I think I kind of have a fantasy shelf life in general. I'll say that. Like, I like fantasy to a point.
Okay.
And but I do love Lord of the Rings. So at some point I would love to do something like this about Lord of the Rings, but I can't pass myself off as like a real
guru,
like encyclopedia of Tolkien knowledge. I'm not. I know.
Well, you have time to get there.
There's always hope.
There's always hope.
And we'll see you next week.
All right. God bless.